Hi, everyone. I'm Candace Parker of Your Los Angeles Sparks, and I am proud to be having this conversation as I represent an organization that is a part of a league that has always been about more than just basketball. And I think that's the biggest thing that we will speak about today. We're going to speak about a number of things, one being social injustice, the platform, the hashtag say her name, as well as hashtag change has no off season. In the words of the LA Sparks organization, we're going to speak a lot about our pillar in the social injustice platform, as well as just normal conversation. I'm very excited to introduce today's guests. Just as an individual, I feel as though to be able to have conversations with other leaders across different avenues, it's so important, super important. Like I said, we're not going to shut up and dribble. We're going to continue to press on, continue to have these conversations, and to continue to acquire knowledge. And today, I hope you guys help me in welcoming Congresswoman Katie Porter. I actually was on the internet, Katie, and was able to first of all, I want to, just like we read off basketball player statistics, I want to read off some statistics I got from a BA from Yale, first and foremost, JD from Harvard Law School. You're from Iowa, which we're going to get to because, my mother is from Des Moines, Iowa, and I spent a number of years of my childhood visiting there. You're a mother to three beautiful children. You've been a congresswoman since 2019. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you. I'm really delighted to be here with you. And, those children may be beautiful, but they're not always well behaved. So we're all doing our best.
Yes, we are, which brings me to my next question. This seems like this is how we open up Zooms and discussions and meetings every time. Everyone's like, so how are you? How is 2020 treating you? Obviously this isn't an ideal situation, but everybody, like you said, is trying to manage and do the best they can.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that my situation as the only single mom, and I want to say this again, the only single mother of young kids in the U.S. Congress. So there are 535 members of the House and the Senate. There's one single mom of young kids, and it's me. And I think one of the things the pandemic has been a reminder of is, as a lot of people have said, it's really hard to have to work while you're taking care of your kids. It's like, yeah, what do you think single moms and single parents and single grandparents have been doing every day? Like, welcome to the struggle. And I hope this can be a moment where we can not just say, let's return to the status quo, because the status quo was way too hard for working parents, including people like you. You're a working parent. It's really, really difficult. And so we need to do more as a country to support working parents, not just to help women, not just to help working parents, but because our whole economy is stronger when we have people who can be in the workforce when they want to be, and be able to balance parenting and family life. So I will just say, it's not easy, but it really has never been easy. And so in some ways, the pandemic is just more of the same.
Well, I think a lot of the similarities in, there's not a lot of women in the WNBA that are mothers either. And I had Layla at 23 years old. It was the second year of my career. And I remember just being met with so much, I would say, questions that it made me be like, how are you asking me these questions?
Do you know the word they were looking for, Candace, when you told them that you were welcoming a child into the world? The word they were looking for was congratulations. I'm so happy for you. And yet, when I was running for office, the single most common question I got asked wasn't what my policy view was on racial justice or on healthcare. It was, what's going to happen to your children if you win? And I was like, what do you mean what's going to happen to them? They're not going to combust. They're just going to continue being children. I'm going to continue being a mother. I've been a working parent the entire time. I've been doing it now 15 years. And so what's going to happen to my children? I guess they'll get up tomorrow, have a bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and go to school, just like always.
Well, there again meets the similarities. When I first came out and announced that I was pregnant, everyone was writing me off and said I wasn't going to be able to come back. And then I would go on the road a number of times, and this is years after I had my daughter, and they would ask, where's your child? And it just dawned on me, like, do you think they're asking LeBron James these questions? Do you think they're asking?
Like, she's in my tote bag. I mean, what do you mean, where is she, right? She's like being taken care of, like working parents everywhere. So I just think it's really important that we make space for people to combine work and family, and that's going to look really different for different people. There are people who aren't going to have kids but are going to be taking care of parents or loved ones. And I think that this whole concept of traditional and non-traditional families is one that we should just get rid of and focus instead on, is it a loving family? Is it a caring situation? Is it a family unit that's supporting each other? And if the answer is no, then there's a lot of that we can point to, things that we need to change policy-wise, like paid family leave, adequate sick days, the costs of childcare. It would be cheaper for my daughter when she was 4 years old, she went to the University of California, Irvine Daycare Center. It would have been cheaper for her to be an undergraduate at UCI than it was for her to go to daycare. And that's the reality for a lot of families.
And, obviously through people like yourself and through other individuals, through citizens just in this country, I think we're going to get to a place, because I know I like to make metaphors, and, in the WNBA, it was difficult to be a single mom. Initially we shared rooms your first 5 years. Mm-hmm. So I had to come out of pocket and buy my half of the room so that my mother could come with me and help me take care of my child. You're talking plane tickets to travel as well, because I nursed her. And so to bring her along, or, a childcare, as you alluded to, and you're only playing during 6 months of the year. So to find childcare somewhere in another city is difficult, but we did make a lot of strides this time in the CBA. We got maternity leave, full paid, which people were astounded that wasn't the case in a women's league that was all women, that we would not have that in there, as well as just having, the ability, you're playing during the times of, your childbearing years. If you think about it, 23, 35, 36, 37, it gets harder. And so to not have those fertility benefits that come along with it. So I'm really proud of the steps we make. We still have a long way to go within the WNBA as well as within this country. But I do think people like you, I know individuals like Nneka Ogwumike, who's, a teammate of mine that's president of the NBPA, they're really trying to make changes. But I really want to start with your upbringing, because first and foremost, Iowa jumped out to me. And I alluded earlier that my mom is from Des Moines, Iowa. And a lot of my childhood, a lot of my summers were spent with my grandparents there. And I try to describe out West the mentality of Midwesterners, but you just can't. It's just kind of built in you. It's work ethic, it's family values. Can you take us through a little bit of your upbringing and how that shaped who you are today?
Yeah, so I grew up on a farm about an hour south of Des Moines. I didn't live in a town. I rode the school bus about 2 hours every day, an hour to school and an hour home from school. And looking back, I spent a lot of that time reading. I think was one of the sort of best investments I ever made, was all that time on the school bus reading. I was very active in 4-H, and that was a wonderful way for me to spend time with my parents and my grandparents, to set goals and to be able to accomplish it. So I did everything from making cookies to showing pigs, if you can believe it. And so it was a wonderful childhood. But rural schools, like a lot of our urban schools, are not always well resourced. And so I pretty quickly was, toward the end of my high school time, was starting to outgrow the curriculum. And so, when I went off to boarding school actually for 2 years, and that was just, no one had heard of that. When I made that decision, people were like, remember that show? You're probably too young for this, Candace, but there was a show called Facts of Life, which was about a girls' boarding school. And everybody was like, it's like the facts of life. And there was like a rumor that I was pregnant, or there was a rumor I was going to military school. But that opportunity to go to that boarding school really opened up a door for me. It opened up an opportunity. And then it was one in which I just kept seizing opportunities. But I do think Midwesterners have both kind of a common sense and a work ethic. And particularly in the wake of this election where a lot of your Democrats didn't win, a lot of my colleagues are not coming back. People, have asked me, how did you do it? Well, one of the answers is we just worked really, really hard. And you know that as an athlete, there's sort of no substitute for hard work. Now, it's not enough. You also have to have some luck. You have to have advocates. You have to be willing to stand up for yourself. But that hard work is a pretty darn good foundation for everything that follows.
Definitely. And through that hard work, there's a lot of individuals, like I speak about with just basketball. There's so many individuals that made it easier for me and opened up doors that would have taken years and years for me to open. And a lot of those individuals, advocates, mentors, didn't see the benefits and didn't reap the benefits of the doors that they opened. I know you have a mentor in Elizabeth Warren, and can you speak about that experience and how important it is for our youth to understand they have to have these type of relationships, but also as individual citizens, we can all make things better for those coming behind us.
Yeah, mentors are really, really important. And I have a couple of things to say. One is about Elizabeth. I mean, Elizabeth Warren was a truly wonderful mentor. I didn't find her when she was a US Senator. I found her when she was a teacher and I was a student. So mentors don't have to be people who are sort of at the, famous people or people who are at the top of their game, so to speak. They're people who are going to make investments in you. They're people who are they may not have made all the right decisions in their life, but they're going to try to help you make good decisions. And so, I've always appreciated that Elizabeth has always been a champion for me. She's always stood by my side. She hasn't hesitated to tell me when she thinks I'm wrong. She hasn't hesitated to praise me when I've worked hard and done things well. But before I ran for Congress, like Elizabeth Warren, I was a law professor. And I would have a lot of students, particularly young women, law students, who would come to my office and I would say, hi, how can I help you? And they would, say, I like your class. Or, we'd chat for a few minutes. And then the student would kind of get up their nerve and they would say, Professor Porter, will you be my mentor? And I would say, yes. And then this is the moment I want people to focus on. They would say, great. And they'd leave my office and I wouldn't see them again. Well, it's not about getting a mentor, isn't like checking a box. It's not something that's like done. It is a lifelong or decade-long or year-long back and forth relationship. So it's about finding someone who will give to you, but you also have to give to your mentor. Elizabeth offered me opportunities, but I had to step up and take them. And they were sometimes scary and they were sometimes hard. But I knew she'd be there to help me get through them. So I would just say to people, don't think about a mentor as something you go get, like you buy something on Amazon and it comes in the carton and you have it. It's a lifelong relationship that you build. And it's about what you put into it as well as what your mentor puts into it. So I just encourage people not just to find a mentor, because I think we emphasize that so much, yes, but to make use of your mentor. Knock on that person's door. Send them an email telling them how you're doing. Ask them, say the words, I need help. What would you recommend? Seek out their advice, be really proactive, because a lot of people, I think, don't know what the mentoring role is, but if you ask them for help, they're happy to step up and help you.
It's been unbelievable for me because I'm kind of transitioning right now into like the business world. And I was just taken aback by how many people are willing to help when you extend yourself and you not only just say, hey, can you be my mentor, but you actually put the time, the energy, the effort into it. And then, one of my business partners said to me, well, if there's a rookie that's coming onto the team and they show up to work out with you and they show up and put the time in, you're willing to help. It's the same thing in the real world. And so I found that, that has been one of the best lessons is to extend yourself. Yes, to ask, but also you got to put the time and the energy and the effort into it.
No, and sometimes it's about being a little bit vulnerable, right? Like I have mentors in Congress. I have people like Rosa DeLaura, Pramila Jayapal, Karen Bass, and I have to call them up sometimes and say, like, I think I made a mistake, or I don't know what to do. I want to do this, but I think I'm going the wrong direction. How do I turn around? So that being vulnerable, kind of asking for help is also, I think, hard for people, especially for women, because I think there's a perception that it's harder for us to see ourselves in those moments.
You hit it right on the head, and which it was a seamless transition into women. We speak a lot of 2020 this year has been about social injustice. It's been about social injustice racially against police brutality. I want to first start because the Sparks are huge advocates, as well as I am a huge advocate for gender equality and equality in general. It's not your equality, it's not my equality, it's our equality. So you can't just fight for one lane. This isn't binary. There's multiple lanes within this fight towards equality. And with that being said, being a woman entering into law, being a woman entering into public service, being a woman entering into Congress, I mean, a record number, 141 women will serve in Congress next year, which is a record, and 116 women in the House, 25 women in the Senate. The more I listen and the more I talk to them, they all have similar stories. So what has that process been like for you, being a woman entering into these male-dominated areas?
I think one of the things is to give yourself a certain amount of permission to build your own path. You talked about what you did as a young mother in the NBA. You didn't have the same experience as other players. And you certainly didn't have the same experience as male players, right? Trying to nurse your daughter, for example. So I think one of the things that's important is to know that there is no single path. The way that what men, privileged people, white men, whatever category it is, have achieved things in the past, our trajectories might look a little different. So when I was in college, I wasn't part of the Democrats or the political union or the debaters. That just didn't feel like who I was. I did a lot of community service. I taught kids from inner city New Haven math. That was what I spent my time in college doing. And actually using the old school whiteboard, the chalkboard, to help teach these kids and help make sure they could succeed in high school. But I cared a lot about service. I cared a lot about equality. I cared a lot about justice. That ultimately led me to law school. But I didn't contemplate running for office until the moment I decided to do it in 2017 in the wake of Donald Trump being elected. So I think it's also about being a little bit forgiving of yourself. Like, your trajectory may not look like everybody else's, but it's that persistence, it's that desire, it's that courage, it's the traits that you're cultivating in yourself that I think will ultimately really matter. And then making sure that you're helping to support other people, saying to them that you can, this is how, I'll stand by your side, I'll make room for you, right? And I think that's one of the most important things that we have to do, is make room for those around us, both to listen to them and also to lift up their voices so that they can be heard.
And along with what you said, in making room, I believe as we have more, and there's more differences at the table than similarities in terms of diversity of thought, diversity of background, all of the above. I think we're going to see more of that support. I'm, in a field of broadcasting, and there's not many people that look like myself up there broadcasting. And so it can be seen as a competition, and it can be seen that you can't support that person because there's only one seat at the table. And so I do encourage us, while it is hard and you are trying to make a living and go about and go to different rooms and things like that, it's going to get to a point where we have to continue to open doors and to help our neighbor and the people beside us.
And one thing I just say on that is, just because it was hard for the person who came before you doesn't mean that it should be hard for the next person. This really is when I think about, another one of my mentors, Kamala Harris, who, I had a newborn child, literally a baby, on the floor of my office the day Kamala Harris called me. I spoke to her for the first time, and she asked me to help families keep their houses in the foreclosure crisis. And, I think about Kamala Harris as a trailblazer. I think about this with Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. What does it mean to be a trailblazer? It doesn't mean just that you get to the top, where you get to the destination, it means that you change the trail, you change the path for those who are going to follow in your footsteps. And that's, so it's really important, I think, not to say, well, I had to suffer, so therefore you have to suffer, right? There weren't very many women when I did this. Doesn't mean that there should continue to not be very many women, right? It's all about changing the path for those of us who follow to open up those opportunities.
And I get so many direct messages, so many tweets from our Generation Z that ask what they can do without a platform. They think that a platform means that you have millions of followers, or you have thousands of followers, or, you know, you have an audience that watches you compete or do something. How would you speak to our youth in utilizing their voices and their platforms when it might not be for thousands, but the importance of maybe just impacting a few, or impacting those inside your household?
Yeah, I think that this is a really great point. And, you know, I didn't go to Congress expecting to have these viral moments. It's still really, people are like, there goes Katie Porter. Or my favorite, when I'm wearing my yoga pants and I'm in the grocery store and I'm hot and sweaty, people will say, you look a lot like that lady, Katie Porter. And that's when I know I need to brush my hair and put on makeup and try to look more like what people think a congressperson should look like. But I really do think that it's important that we make these opportunities for people, that we make this space. And I think it just takes time to build that platform, but you really build it by building your own character. And that's something that you can do completely out of sight. My formative experiences, the people who made me, the moments that made me who I am, weren't moments in the spotlight. They were the quiet moments. They were that community service I talked about, helping those kids become better at math, service work I've done, those relations, not just the student who went on to get the A's and also become a law professor, but also the student who really struggled to get through law school, but made it because I was there to help listen, and they were willing to step up and do the work. So I just think for a lot of people, the platform is the outcome of doing the good work, and you have to think about everything you're doing as an opportunity to build character. Every day we get to get up and decide, who are we going to be today? Are we going to be somebody who fights for equality? Are we going to be someone who's kind? Are we going to be someone who sees those in our community who are in need? Or are we going to be someone who turns the other cheek? And those are not just choices that you make on Twitter or on social media. Those are choices you make every single moment of the day.
It's interesting. There's so many similarities between a lot of different professions. And when you were speaking, I just kept hearing the late, great Kobe Bryant in my ear speaking about how, you know, when you said that it's what you're doing in the dark, it's what you're doing during the tough times. And he would always say, because I would always ask him, you're 8 for 26 from the field. How do you step up and hit that game winner? And he would say, percentage wise, I put in the time, I put in the energy, I put in the effort. The next shot has to go in. And that's what we have to have for our future generations coming up, is they have to understand the time that they're putting in now is what's going to make them successful or push them through the tough times in the future.
I'm so sorry, Candace. I don't want you to be looking away, but I have to vote on the House floor. So just give me a minute.
This is everything. We needed this.
I need to make sure that I cast my vote.
And everyone out there, the importance of voting, we can't say enough. We need to speak. That's another pillar that's built into the Sparks social justice campaign, is voting. I think voting is so important, not just in the presidential election, but as a citizen voting in those local.
All right, I got that done. We voted to help people who are caregivers to veterans. So that was a good vote to take. But, you know, it's really, what you're saying about voting is really important. And I think that, you know, I have people, particularly young people sometimes, I think, who are really skeptical about whether or not their vote matters. And I think it's really important to take that skepticism seriously, not to kind of wave it off. A lot of people who are 30, 35, 40, their first real memory of an election might have been like Al Gore and the hanging Chads and the mess in Florida, but they've lived in an area in which there's a lot of dark money that influences politics, in which there's not a lot of bipartisan cooperation, in which people see a lot of dysfunction. And so I think you have to really say to young people, there are problems in our political system. I'm not going to pretend that you're not right about that. Instead, I'm saying, if you believe there are problems in our political system, what's that challenge to you then? In a democracy, you don't get to walk away. You have to get in the game, or as my colleague Kirsten Gillibrand would say in the Senate, get off the sidelines, right? And for each of us, how we play that game, what we do politically is going to look different. But turning your back on a broken democracy just guarantees that the democracy is further weakened. So everybody really has to step up. And for some people, that'll be voting. For some people, that'll be registering voters or educating people on an issue they care about, whether it's criminal justice reform or climate change. And for some people, it will be stepping up and running for office. I'd love to vote for you, Candace.
Oh, well, I'll have to speak about that later. Maybe that might be something that, that will happen in the future, possibly. But, I think democracy is not a destination. I remember my history teacher told us that in 8th grade. Democracy is not a destination. It is a journey. And we all have to do our part to continue to push that forward. 2020 has been a year of so many people having tough conversations and having to look themselves in the mirror and realize their blind spots and areas in which they can improve, so that we can continue to improve this country. I've played all over the world, and despite the United States' shortcomings, despite the many things that are wrong with the United States, it's the best country, and I want to live here, and I'm very proud to be an American. And with that comes my right, as James Baldwin says, to criticize America as well, and to try to push it to be better. This year has been filled with that. And one of our campaigns, and the Say Her Name, wearing Breonna Taylor's name on the back of our jersey, and bringing and shining a light to social injustice and police brutality. This year, what would you say to people that are telling athletes, entertainers, activists to just stay in their lane? What is your message and what is your voice towards that?
I think that your lane as an American is democracy. And that doesn't change just because of your career path. Every single person who's an American, every patriot, everyone who loves this country has a duty to vote, to speak up, to push for fairness, for justice, for equality, for all of the things that make our country great, for the ideals that we don't always get to, but we continue to push toward. And so I think that, this idea that, I think back to some of the controversies, the Dixie Chicks and the sort of shut up and sing moment, right? Or the athletes, just play. But every single one of us is part of the fabric of this country. And every single one of us as an American has that right to vote, to criticize the government, to work in the government, to be part of our democracy. And I think that it's really unfortunate that people would suggest that just because we might not agree with some of the people, or we might not share their views, that we would try to silence them. To me, that debate, that disagreement, it's inherent in a democracy, and we shouldn't run away from it. We shouldn't be uncomfortable about it. We should try to keep it civil. We should try to say, I see this so differently than you. Where did you get your perspective? What am I missing? What do you see that I don't see? And I think that's the kind of spirit that we need to be bringing to things, but not silencing, not trying to push people to be not active. We need more power to the wide variety of Americans, the real people of this country, and less power in the hands of the few. And so that means we want to engage everybody from all different walks of life, whether you work in a retail store, whether you're a bartender, whether you're a WNBA player, we want to hear your voice.
Katie Porter, I don't want to take up any more of your time. This discussion has been so powerful for me. I was a fan before, and I'm even more of a fan of you now, especially since I found out of your Iowa roots. Thank you so very much for joining us today, and I look forward to crossing paths when all this is over. Hopefully, we can have you to a game.
Absolutely, I'd love to. And I just want to say to everyone, thank you for staying engaged in our democracy. Keep it up. Know that I see you, and I'm so proud to be representing you.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Everyone, thank you for tuning in to this discussion. Katie Porter was unbelievable with just all of her advice. I hope everyone out there learned something from this discussion. I know I am proud to represent the LA Sparks. I'm proud to represent the WNBA as we continue to give voice to change and power behind it and action behind it. And so to stand with an organization that is deliberate in what they're doing to help the community, I'm going to say it and say it until I'm blue in the face. We are the WNBA, a women's league, 80% African American, part of the LGBTQ community, social economic backgrounds, religion. We are the majority of the minority. And I promise you, to everybody out there, we're doing our best to continue to give the voice to a voice to the voiceless, as well as create change. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you all soon.